Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Soft Spoken Wednesday. Today, I'm going to share with you a story that has been requested for a while and is the story of the British Jeffrey Dahmer. Now, if you've been on my channel for any period of time, you know that I love to do series and just share with you guys as much detail as I can. And if you missed the Jeffrey Dahmer story, I'll have a link in the description box down below where you can check it out. However, today we're going to talk about Dennis Nilsen. Now, he was born in Scotland in 1945. I couldn't find anything from his childhood relevant enough to add it here, but just so you know, he had a less than perfect childhood, and his parents ended up divorcing early on his years, and his mom decided to marry this other guy who really was not the best guy in the world to be a father figure. Now, some people, I feel like, or at least the cases that I cover here, that they don't have a role model. In this case, Dennis did have somebody, and it was his grandpa. His grandpa was a fisherman, and he was a good example, a good role model for him, and he adored him. He felt like grandpa was the one who wanted to spend time with him, the one that wanted to have a relationship, the one who cared enough, the one that loved him enough. As I mentioned, his grandpa was a fisherman. So part of the routine of their relationship was that Dennis would go wait by, or actually at the beach, for his grandpa's boat to come back. This was something that he enjoyed doing, just looking out and trying to see if he could see the boat. And it was just part of our routine that they created and that he loved so much. However, like all grandpas, he died, and while he was still young. Of course, he was an older guy, and he had a heart attack, and sadly the one good influence and the one good example and role model that he had vanished. And I think grandparents are a great influence if they are involved enough. I myself was very close to my mother's parents, or my grandparents, and I didn't have my father's parents, where they died before I was born. So I don't know what it's having both of them, but I know that I had a very close relationship with my grandparents, and my grandpa died when I was 13, and for me it was devastating. It really took me over a year to get to be okay with the idea that it was his time to go. And I knew he had cancer, and I knew that he was fighting for over 10 years. However, I just, and I can only imagine that how he was feeling when he was the only person in the world that he felt that loved him and really cared about him. So this was one of the points in his life where he really, marked him, scarred him. And again, this is something that happens to most people I know. Grandparents start dying, they're older, and there are things that we are equipped to deal with. However, in his case, he wasn't ready for it. The way that he coped with this was by going to the beach, and in some instances he would go in the water and just float until one day that he was doing that, and suddenly he was taken in by the currents. He mentioned that he fought and tried to stay afloat, but he couldn't, and at what point he realized that he was going to die. So he let go. At that moment, an arm reached down and pulled him from under the water, and apparently this was a bystander that saw him struggling and was rushing in to help him. Now, some people described him as emotionally crushed, and I can only imagine how crushed he was about this. But right after that is when he realized that he started to like a boy, and he quickly realized that he was homosexual and that he liked boys. Sadly, at that time, it was not okay, and it was something that he kept to himself. But he would abuse his older brother, while he was sleeping. So, just so you have an idea, he was still acting on the things that he was feeling with the people that were closer to him. Now, later on, he decided to enlist in the military. He lasted 11 years, and he became a heavy drinker. He would go out with his buddies, and he would just have a good time getting drunk, I guess, if you can call that a good time. Not judging, but since I don't drink, I don't 100% get it. But he started to go out, and all of a sudden, all those sexual desires came back, and he started fantasizing about being drunk and his buddies abusing him. He got to the point where he would fake to be drunk or really drunk, and he would try to, I don't know, seduce his friends in order to get what he wanted. However, his friends never acted on it, and I feel like he felt like something was, I don't know how, like they were rejecting him. It seems that's what it was, because right after that he decided that he wanted that, he changed his fantasy, and he decided that he wanted that relationship with his friends if they were unconscious or dead. So I guess that when he realized that his friends were not into it is when he finally, I don't know, started thinking about the alternative, because he was really, really lonely. So in 1972, he ended up leaving the military and moved back home. However, his brother, when it was mentioned the idea of being gay, he just couldn't take it and made fun of him, criticized him, and he decided to leave not only his brother but his family overall, because he couldn't take it. He couldn't take his family not accepting him for who he was. And he left. He started to feel very, very lonely. He just, according to him, he felt like he fitted nowhere. So he decided that he was going to be somebody that people would look up to, and that way get friends and people that would admire him and acknowledge him. So he became a police officer for 1 year. In 1973, he stopped being one. Not sure why, so I can't speculate, but then he decided, or actually got a job as a security guard. So at that time, he decided to go, I should say, to gay bars and try to find friends. He wasn't successful. I'll give you my theory at the end, but he just couldn't find them. So in 1978, he decided that he was going to be inviting people, luring them into his home with drugs and alcohol and maybe one night stand or kind of thing. And he started inviting men to go to his house. Now, out of all the men that he invited, some went, and actually 12 of them never came out of his house. So he felt like nobody would want to be with him, so he was going to collect these people with no emotions and make them stay. He was angry, he was sad, he was lonely, and so the ways that he used to get rid of these people were just brutal and really even hard to tell you about. Now, I'm gonna give you some details, and I realize about me that when I have to read something like this, there's something in my mind that really protects me from remembering it. So I always have to read it. So he was choking them, and in a way that he would distract them, either with drugs, the alcohol, maybe they were eating, maybe they were sleeping, and he would come from behind and use his hands or use a cord or use something that he had close by to choke them. Then he would go to the bathtub or a bucket and finish them completely. Now he had a ritual, and his ritual was to give them a bath, have intimacy, abusive intimacy, I don't know how to say it so it won't be flagged in a video, but and he was also, after that, he would just cut them in pieces. He started hiding them under floorboards, some parts burning them, other ones boiling the heads, chop bones, flush down the toilet parts. And he did this all over the place because he didn't stay in one place in particular. He actually moved around. Now, there was one exception that he did for some weird reason. There was this guy that he choked and then tried to drown, and the guy survived. So he basically nursed him back to health, and then told him that he was wrapped around the sleeping bag zipper and that he was choking, so he helped them. I don't know how, but this guy escaped. Of course, he survived. He let him go, but he never reported it to the police. Now, this final guy, he was apparently having some kind of a seizure. He was epileptic, and he was taking this medicine, and he collapsed by Dennis's front door. Dennis came out, saw him, brought him inside, called an ambulance. The guy spent 24 hours at the hospital, and then he decided to come back to thank Dennis for helping him. However, Dennis took him as another victim and stuffed his body in a cupboard. Now, you're probably wondering how this guy got caught. Well, it's a pretty, I'm gonna call it silly way. He was flushing things down the toilet, and the entire building was having problems with the plumbing. So they were complaining, but Dennis was actually the one that called the people that could do something about it to help him get rid of the clogged It's so bizarre that he did that. So they ended up finding bodies, and he was actually arrested because of his own complaint in the sewerage issue that he had. This was in 1983. He, of course, was arrested. He was sentenced, he got the life sentence, and he died actually when he was 72 years old on May 12th, so about a year ago. Well, it's actually today's the 8th, so in a few days it will be a year since he died. Now again, this is one of those cases that I could have gone through all the victims and all the details and everything, but I felt like his story is one that we all pretty much know from Jeffrey Dahmer. It almost feels like they were feeling the same loneliness. They were feeling like being gay was not okay. They were made, people made them feel that way. And because of that, they desperately wanted that company that they couldn't have. Not because there were no other gay people in the world, but because it wasn't the time to be. And it wasn't the time for them to be themselves and accepted. Now, this is not an excuse for what he did. I know at least 3 different cases of people that were not accepted, that were actually thrown out of the house for their sexuality, and that I know specifically a guy that had to be homeless for an entire year because his parents wouldn't accept him. And so it's interesting to know that these people I know coped in a different way. Of course, this is a different time, but I'm sure that a lot of people at the same time period were dealing with this stuff, yet they didn't decide to go getting dead boyfriends that they wanted to keep at their house. It's bizarre. However, while I was doing the Manson, that I'm not done yet, the Manson family case, which is a pretty long one, I was reading this research about how serial killers, only 25% of them have a mental illness. Like a real mental illness. They can have mental issues, that it's not an illness, but I feel like a lot of people put these guys that had a bad childhood into the mental illness category, when there's clearly a difference in a mental issue versus a mental illness. I think like mental issues they have a lot to do with the kind of life that we live, the people around us, our parents, our friends, our environment, and how we react to those things. Part of our nature, part of what we are taught. However, mental illness, it's in a completely different category, and that is saying a lot, especially for me that I do the research about these cases all the time. This guy had no mental illness. He had mental issues. But if you talk to a psychologist, he's going to tell you that 100% of the population of the world will have mental issues. What he did was react to those feelings that he had in his own issues and find a destructive and evil way to deal with those emotions that he felt. there's a big distinction there, and that is why not everyone qualifies to be under the category of mentally ill. That's why they don't go to a mental hospital, because if you have a mental issue, welcome to the club. But a mental illness is something that is diagnosed, is something that it's part of you that you cannot control unless you get help. Yet, if you have a mental issue, on the other side, you can control it. You can learn to control it. But most people, like serial killers, don't really want to. They feel like they're perfectly okay. Not because they're sick, but because that's a way that they interpret life. So I thought it was important to make this little, clarification in the end, just to tell you that he had nothing wrong with him, and that most people have to go through some kind of a problem or an issue, but how you deal with it, how you react, what you do with what is thrown at you, it's what's going to make a difference. This is something that I can talk about all day about because I feel like it's important for people to know that there are certain things that you are able to change about yourself. And I've actually started writing a little ebook some time ago that I'm hoping to finish when I'm done with the house, about how to change the worst of you into the best of you. And I think I'll make a video about it, a quick video about it, because I feel like there's a lot of people that feel like they don't have an option. They don't have a say in the way that they react or how they use the way they are. But there's a lot that you can do to change yourself and to change the way you react to things. So, let me know in the comments down below what you think about this case. Do you think that maybe this guy being so similar to the Jeffrey Dahmer thing is considered some kind of an illness to you? Is loneliness part of an illness that we don't even know about? Do you think loneliness can do that for you? Do you think that not being accepted is what? And I guess we all deal with these things in different ways. I was talking to my sister-in-law the other day, and we were talking about how people look for acceptance in different ways. Some people believe that they have nothing in their brains to offer, that they're not smart enough, charming enough, sweet enough. So they work on their bodies so people would look at them and say, wow. They get the acceptance from their physical point, I guess, because they feel like they have nothing else that people would turn around to look at them and pay attention. So again, it's a common thing to feel that way. It's just interesting to know that maybe he didn't have the personality that would attract people. Maybe he was really odd, or maybe he was really weird in the way that he approached people, and that's why he couldn't make friends. And adding the being gay to the equation maybe made it worse. So thank you for joining me today. I hope that you can share with me down below in the comments, and I will see you back here on Friday, hopefully. I mentioned the other day that we are ready not ready. But we're going to have to put the house in the market soon, within a week. So we're just trying to get things done. So hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to still get Friday's video up and share with you a whispered true crime case. Thanks for watching.